Yay.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi, Rabbi Karsh.
how are you?
How are you?
We're well. How are you?
Good. We're in the middle of transitioning. My father's out of the hospital, and I'm his.
When did he go in the hospital?
Last week, and he was in the hospital for a week with congestive heart failure and pneumonia and stuff. But now he is home. I'm with him in Milwaukee, and I am his attendant.
Caregiver.
Yes, but he gives me permission to have this class. He's with us here, and he gives me permission to have Torah for a moment.
Okay.
Which is
we will. Well, if whatever you have to do, you have to do.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
yes, glad he's out of the hospital.
We are too. All right, so here we go. Spell it wrong. Let's try that again. Oh, Safaria. Looked like the right word.
Are you doing the daf in the morning?
So I did Sunday. I didn't do it today, but I'm planning on doing it tomorrow. We'll see. It's like one day at a time for that.
Okay.
How do you make up for missed days?
Oh yeah.
You don't. They do it on their own. They have many resources, not just an Art Scroll or a Steinsaltz Gemara, but there are all these various classes online.
Oh yeah.
So they have so many options.
They'll have Shiurim from 20 years ago.
Right. There are, without exaggeration, more than 100 different options for the English-speaking audience. Everything from people who do an exceptional job at just clearly reading it to people that add everything that was said about the subject. And so everybody gets to pick the one that suits them best. And there's Rabbi Eli Stefanski, who he is this massively popular teacher. He has multi-cameras, not just one camera on him when he's giving the class. He has many cameras from all different angles, and he has thousands of people that listen to him every day. He has these fan clubs all around, people who there are people that are on camping trips that video themselves listening to him camping off in the wilds. There's people in hospital beds that are listening to him. Anyways, he's
what is
quite
he
a
bring to the
phenomenon.
table?
He brings personality. I mean, he's a knowledgeable guy. He's a very knowledgeable guy. He's very bright, but he also brings a kind of, I would say he brings the personality, but I think what people like about it is not just his personality, but also that they're part of like a community of people that are learning from him. So anyways, it's quite funny to see the phenomenon. That when I was in Israel at the beginning of this last cycle, like right before the beginning of this last cycle, there were actual advertisements on the sides of buses.
Really?
With his picture on it. He didn't, I mean, it was his guys. He has this chevra of guys who do it.
You should have a little video of girls do the daf. Never mind.
Yes, yes. All right, so we talked about Arei Miklat the last time, cities of refuge, and the notion of what I was calling a kind of misdirection. It's not, I'm not saying the Torah is misdirecting, but whenever somebody talks about the subject, it feels like misdirection, because everybody talks about the fact that there are these cities to run to, and all the rules for running to the cities, but ignores the permission given to family members to kill the guy if he doesn't get to the city. That doesn't really get discussed much. And so I presented my theory about that. And now we are on to mitzvah number 184. Mitzvah 184 in the Rambam is as follows. That is, that he, capital H, God, commanded us to remove obstacles and dangers from all of our inhabitations. And that is that we build a wall around the roof, the pits and the ditches, and that which is similar to them, so that the one in danger will not fall over them or into them. So the actual mitzvah here is makkah. The mitzvah that's mentioned in the Torah is building something, a kind of fence or guardrail or something on your roof to make sure that if people are on the roof, they don't fall over. Roofs for much of history were flat and were used. They were often working roofs. They used them to store things. They used them to dry produce. They used them to keep livestock. So people would often be on top, tending to whatever, and therefore there had to be some protection so that they wouldn't fall off. So that's called the mitzvah of makkah. So specifically, we're talking about roofs, but the Rambam is extending it to anything on your property where that might pose a danger. So you are supposed to protect people who are on your property from falling into a pit, falling off your roof. If you had rickety stairs, I'm assuming that this would apply to putting some kind of fencing or protection around a swimming pool. If you had a swimming pool. So he extends it. It's not just a protection on the roof. And likewise, all dangerous and rickety places should all be built up properly to remove the ricketiness and the danger. And that is his may be exalted, saying, you shall make a parapet for your roof. The language of the Sifrei, again, the halachic midrash is, and you shall make, that is a positive commandment. So that's why it's listed in the positive commandments. The regulation of this commandment have already been explained in Bava Kama. So I don't know how extensive this law is in practice, but the Rambam, by saying, and likewise all dangerous and rickety places, is applying it broadly. So
okay, regardless of the scope.
Yeah.
What was I going to ask? I hate these moments. A parapet.
Yeah.
It's not only it's a positive commandment, but you can be held liable in a certain way, can't you, if you fail to do it?
Right. Are you asserting that, or are you asking that?
I'm asking, but it's sort of like, I think it's an assertion. What's that case that they bring? Like a person who has a hole in the public.
Now that is a bore. That's actually, you're right. That is explicit in the Torah, that if you leave, that you are liable for damages that are caused let's say an animal falls into a pit in a public domain, there are instances where you may be even liable if it's in your own area. Now there, it's under it doesn't say you can't dig a pit. It just says if somebody digs one and damages happen, that the person is going to be, the one who dug it is going to be liable to pay for the damages. But there is a extensive conversation amongst the Rishonim, amongst the medieval commentators, about whether there's also a prohibition. In other words, when we talk about damages, so is that just a matter of kind of consideration? I did something, so therefore I'm indebted to you. I have to pay you for the damages that I did, or is there some kind of crime here? Have I transgressed something? So again, let's say I have a truck and I ask a friend to drive the truck, and I'm standing in the flatbed in the back with a baseball bat, and we drive, and as we're driving, I smash the mailboxes as we're going by because it's just a lot of fun. And then after I finish smashing all the mailboxes on the block, I then replace each one with an identical replacement so that the person is whole. When the person wakes up in the morning, they have no loss. Now, there was a temporary period where they had loss, but they didn't really experience it. And by the time they realized that the replacement was already there. So have I done anything wrong? So
Yes.
So we say, so the intuition, the assumption is that I've done something wrong. But the question is, if that's the case, what? So there's different opinions. Rabbeinu Yonah is the one most oft quoted. He suggests that it's a subset of the prohibition of theft. That it's somehow in the category of theft. I would just say, at first blush, you have not done anything wrong. First, because it doesn't say not to do it anywhere. It doesn't say don't cause a damage. But everybody assumes there must be something wrong here, and then eventually there are all sorts of suggestions about what that thing might be. So there is an assumption that you did it wrong. Same thing with the Rambam says this with regards to an eye for an eye. With regards to an eye for an eye, the Rambam says that even though we understand an eye for an eye to be compensation, that you must pay for the eye, after you've done that, let's say you've done that, you still are indebted to the person. You still need forgiveness from the person, because in truth, it should be your eye for the other eye. That's how it really should be. In a perfect world where you could exact perfect justice, it really should be an eye for an eye. But it would never be perfect justice, because whatever you did to the other person, you're not going to be able to reciprocate exactly. The other person is not going to get it exactly. Like, for instance, what if the other guy's vision wasn't that good, and then you blinded him, and then so-and-so blinded them. So now when you're going to try to reciprocate and blind this person, you're going to blind them, and his vision, his vision happened to be better. You're not doing exactly the same thing to him you did to the other person. The Gemara has like 10 different explanations as to why it's not an eye, besides the fact that it's oral law, but they try to find all sorts of indications from the written Torah, and in a certain way those provide all different kinds of angles as to why you don't do an eye for an eye literally. But the Rambam seems to be saying that really you should. Strict justice would require it, but you just can never get there. So we do the second best, which is compensation. That's why we compensate somebody for their eye. So therefore, you haven't really, when you compensated them, you haven't really fully paid, you haven't fully done atonement. And therefore, you still need, you have something left to do. You still need to atone for it. You see there, when you cause damage to another person, the assumption is there's an atonement involved. And there's a couple places in the Gemara where people point that out. The Minchas Chinuch points that out, that a language of atonement is used when it comes to damages. It's not just a transactional thing with paying for it, but there's an assumption that atonement is required, that you've done something that's wrong.
But to get back to
Yeah.
but to the original question, so are you liable for damages if you are you liable for manslaughter?
Yeah, so I'm saying that regularly you're suggesting that digging a pit is the negative side of this positive commandment. That's what you were originally suggesting.
Well, yeah, but that was that was
There's
not
a-
the example I was looking for, but it was a related idea. But I'm just talking about the parapet. Is that something like it would be the same thing as the guy with the axe? He didn't check properly. You didn't maintain the thing. He has to go to Gullus. You have to go to Gullus.
Huh?
What?
What?
No, the guy who's going into Gullus killed the other guy,
Okay,
right? He killed the other guy.
but it was due to negligence.
Right, but
It's true. It's true. He didn't do anything active with his hands, but
he killed
I don't know if that's crucial.
Right. He did something that is considered a crime. He was
criminally negligent.
Right.
Right. He did a crime. But if I break your window, on the face of it, I didn't do a crime. I just have to pay you. I damaged your window. If you look on the surface, this is that discussion. There is no place where it overtly says in the Torah that you can't cause damage to somebody else's property. It just says you have to pay. This is one of those things they point out about the Hammurabi codes. I've seen one of the distinctions they make between the Hammurabi codes and the Torah is that the Torah actually says things like don't steal. The Hammurabi codes doesn't say don't steal. They just say if somebody steals, you do X, Y, Z. If somebody kills, you do X, Y, Z. But it never actually comes out and says, I don't know, philosophically or theologically, if this should be a big deal, but it's often pointed out as one of the major distinctions between the Torah and something like the Hammurabi codes, that the Torah actually takes a stand. Don't steal, don't kill. These are morally wrong. And it's not just if somebody steals, then this is what happens. So, but it does see what, at least this is how, at first when you encounter it, it seems like when it comes to damages, that's sort of how it is. If I damage something, I fix it. And once I fixed it, we're done.
Huh.
So
Well, Rabbi, in the
Yeah.
case of the parapet,
Yeah.
so obviously, if you don't do it, no one's going to come and inspect, and you have, in other words, if nobody gets hurt, nothing's happened. Just the fact that you haven't set up a parapet,
well,
it doesn't
the courts can enforce when it comes to positive commandments.
right.
The courts can enforce it. They can enforce positive commandments. So technically, they could say you have to put up that makkah, that parapet, And then they could punish you if you don't. You could actually get lashes for positive
Okay,
commandment if
that's
the
what
court
I
doesn't
was
want you.
wondering.
Right, so they
That's
could
what-
enforce it. And but let's say you broke a guy's window, you're not going to get lashes for breaking a guy's window. The guy's gonna sue you. You're gonna go
Oh,
to
that's different.
civil
Yeah.
court. You're gonna go.
Right.
It's civil litigation. It's not criminal. Again, that's if you're looking at the discussions on the surface. When you start to get to the mainly it's in the Achronim, in the sort of latter day scholars that you have the broad discussion of this, and but they are citing sources in places like Rabbeinu Yonah and the Rambam and others that indicate that something you need tshuva, something you did something wrong when you caused damage to somebody else. You're taking it for granted. I'm just telling you, that's where we end up, but it wasn't. It was a two-step process to get there. Okay. This is a mitzvah where you wonder, oh, what about nowadays? That is, that he commanded us to destroy idolatry and all of its houses with all types of destruction, annihilation, breaking, and burning, demolishing and cutting, every type according to what will be most enhanced and quickest in the destruction. And the intention is that we should not leave a trace of that. That is, may he be exalted, saying, you must surely destroy all the sites at which they worshipped, etc., tear down their altars. Is also saying you shall tear down their altars. And because in the Gemara Sanhedrin it mentions, they're saying the positive commandment of idolatry, they said by way of wonder, what positive commandment is there in idolatry? Because to explain, to tear it down. It's not a positive commandment to do idolatry. It's a positive commandment to tear it down. And the language of the Sifrei is, from where do we know that if he cut down idolatry even 10 times and it grew again, he must still cut it down? Hence, we learn to say you must surely destroy. So here, it's not just to be engaged in the destroying, but you actually have a goal. It must be destroyed. And they say there, and you shall destroy their name from that place. In the land of Israel, you're commanded to pursue it. It's complete destruction. You're not commanded to pursue it outside of the land of Israel, which is also sort of interesting because you would think that it shouldn't make a difference with something like idolatry. If you're supposed to destroy it, you're supposed to destroy it. So I remember Rabbi Meir Kahana, every once in a while, he would get into trouble for something he did or said. He was a provocateur extraordinaire. And one of his things was that he doesn't understand why we are allowing churches to continue to function in the land of Israel. We should be destroying them. We have a mitzvah to destroy them. And then he would like quote from the Rambam or the Gemara in the Knesset, and people would be shouting him down and calling for him to be censored and stuff like that. But it does seem to be a mitzvah in the Torah. It seems that we're supposed to be doing this. So let's see, because I have. Well, while I'm looking for something that talks about it, I'll reiterate, because I'm sure I've shared this with you guys many times, but my lunch with Imam Antetople from, he was an imam at Duke University, and he on campus. But he became sort of important because he took part in this program that was sponsored by the Hartman Institute in Jerusalem, where they were trying to get imams to talk to other imams about Israel, and to counter the hatred of Muslims for Jews, and to try to get imams on board. So he was the imam that was helping with that project. And I had lunch with him in Chicago because there was a family that was hosting him, and they had promised him a steak lunch because he couldn't get one near Duke because there was no place that had halal steak or kosher steak. So he would eat kosher shchita. So we went to Shalitz and we had lunch together, and I had prepared for it. I only heard about it in the morning, but for the next 3 hours, I listened to recordings of him talking and stuff and did a lot of research about him. So I was completely prepared for our lunch, and I just talked the whole time. I asked questions the whole time. I said, I began by saying, I'm pretty sure we're never going to get a chance to meet again because I'm not the kind of person that's going to be useful for you. I don't have a lot of sway with people. I'm not, somebody that is important. So we're not going to see each other again. But I wanted to make the most out of this opportunity. So I just peppered him with questions in between bites of his steak and my steak. So one of the things I asked him was, this was right after ISIS had blown up those Buddhist statues. There were these famous, very tall carvings of the Buddha into the sides of a mountain, and they just fired rocket-propelled grenades or missiles at it and destroyed it. It was considered a heritage site. People were just sickened by it. And so I asked him what he thought about that, and I mentioned that guilt, I had a little bit of guilt feelings about it because the Torah does say to destroy idolatry. And if those were idolatry, the Torah would be asking us to do it. So I wondered if he had a similar kind of feeling, because they certainly Muslims don't tolerate idols either. So he told me a sort of interesting thing. He said that because Muslims have had continuous control in certain parts of the world, so they've had traditions develop just because of things that were done or not done while there was Muslim control. So he said, for instance, there are stories about Muhammad where he broke idols, where he would go to places and break up idols. But since Muhammad, it wasn't really a thing. And he said those I forgot where they were. I think they're near Nineveh or something. Those big, actually, I don't know where they were, but they were somewhere in Muslim land. And he said that they were tolerated and the fact that they were tolerated, it sort of becomes a custom to allow for it, or a kind of tolerance of it. I also asked him if I mentioned to him that thing about that, what was her name? Her father was a famous Knesset, Orthodox Knesset member, and then she became the chief of staff for Rivlin, for the president of Israel. And so they were on, Rivlin was meeting with the Pope. Rivlin, the president of Israel, was going to meet with the Pope. And she had asked, there's a guy who's like a cultural attaché to the president of Israel, who's supposed to be in charge of all the etiquette when they have meetings. And she had said to the guy, make sure that he understands that I can't shake his hand and I can't bow down to him. I can't bow to him. And then right before the meeting, the guy said, I forgot to tell him. And then she was so nervous, what's she going to do? So when they got to the meeting, she explained to him that she couldn't shake his hand, and that she also couldn't bow to him. The bowing, she explained, is because he had a cross, and she can't bow to the cross. So the Pope, there's a picture of the Pope putting his hand over the cross and then bowing to her. And then there's this whole explanation. I saw it in the Jerusalem Post somewhere. This same woman was in the Oval Office with Biden, and Rivlin told Biden that she was the mother of like 13 children. And Biden got down on his knee and bowed before her. So there are two pictures. The same woman has two pictures. There are two pictures that were in the media. One of the Pope bowing to her, and one of the President of the United States bowing to her, for two completely different reasons. It's just remarkable. She's
Wow.
There's no explanation. It wasn't like one thing led to the other, or there was some kind of common story. No, they were completely two different stories. And if you look her up, if you even do just like Rivlin, chief of staff or something, and then Pope bowing and Biden and President Biden bowing. Right? She has these. Anyways, so I asked the Imam on Teple about the thing about, would you bow to the Pope? I like that. And he also said, I understand why Jews have an issue with the cross. He said, you have a long history where there was terrible atrocities done in the name of the cross to you. We don't have as much. The cross, we consider the cross a foolishness. We don't have as big an issue with the cross, even though they have an issue with the Crusades. They use the word crusaders all the time, and they have an issue with the Crusades. But I guess they don't take the word crusades that literally. But anyways, he said that about the cross. He said, I get why you do it, but we don't have as big a thing. And then he told me that thing about how they have a sort of custom of tolerance, even though Muhammad himself destroyed all sorts of idols, but after that, people didn't. And so they sort of let it be. They tend to let them be. Now, when he says that, obviously ISIS didn't, so not everybody's letting it be. And what was, and then there was another thing, and this is just about crosses in general. My father used to like to sell items at there's a flea market about a half an hour outside of Milwaukee called 7 Mile Fair. It's a very big flea market. And so my father used to sell things at the flea market, like on Sundays, and I used to go with him. And at one point, he ended up with these necklaces with crosses on them. He amongst the things he would sell were like little these necklaces. He'd have like a display with all these little sort of inexpensive necklaces. And there was one thing with crosses. I was horrified, and I was going like, how can you sell crosses? And he was joking, they're not really crosses. Look, they're X's. And but anyways, recently I was and over the years I've looked at the halacha about these subjects, and you'll see that technically there is, it seems like halachic permit to sell them. It's suggested that you don't, but there seems to be halachic permit to sell them because they're considered a symbol. They're not considered an actual object of idolatry halachically. I'm saying this theoretically, and Ramosha Isserlich is oft quoted with regard to this, that with things like this, also whether or not when they use the name, let's say the name Jesus, so are they articulating an idolatry when they use the word Jesus? So he again, all of this is worth looking up, but it seemed like, according to him, that it's a mistake, their notion that Jesus is part of the Trinity, etc., is a mistake, but he considers it not an idolatrous mistake, but rather a mistake, just a mistake. And it's a mistake in the notion of oneness. What is monotheism, etc. So, and also in that discussion, there's a discussion about the cross and certain other symbols. So, and this is something you will see fairly across the board. Like if somebody's chess pieces and the king has a cross. I've asked Rav Scheinberg about that. There's other post-game I've seen written about that where they say you don't have to break off the cross. If you have Swiss Army knife, these are symbols, more like political symbols. They're not seen to be idolatrous. If they were idolatrous, you would have to destroy it. If they were real idolatry, you'd have to destroy it. You have to destroy idolatry. You have to destroy the altars. You have to destroy, etc. So you would have to destroy it, or at least you wouldn't be able to have it around you. Our mitzvah is the actual houses of worship, but and the altars, and that the mitzvah to destroy them, even if they're not yours. That's again seems to apply in Israel. But having an object of idolatry, you're not allowed to have an object of idolatry. You're not supposed to have an. I remember, and I've shared everything. I've shared every story with you, so I shouldn't even have that caveat beforehand. But when I was at the Israel Museum, I've gone to the Israel Museum several times in the last few years with pastors and on my own. And there's this little exhibit right near where they have an exhibit about the history of Hebrew, the written Hebrew language. They have this display of idols, basically, these little things that they've come across during excavations, these little idols. And because they come up so much, you're studying about them in Novi, like Dagon or Kamosh or Beelzebub, Baal-Zevuv, the Lord of the Flies. There's all these idols and deities, Baal and Ishtar and what we call Asherah. All these idols are mentioned, so they become a subject of fascination, and you always can't help yourself. And I found myself like looking at these idols, but the thing was, I noticed my posture. I was actually bowing down because I was looking at the display trying to read it, and I was bent over looking at the display trying to read it, and I realized to my horror and humor that I was bowing down to these idols. So you can't do that. That is forbidden. Forbidden to bow down to them. Forbidden to own them. Forbidden to, etc. All right.
Yes.
So
Rabbi,
as far as
quick question.
why we don't destroy these places, why do we allow churches to go? Maybe I'll find an article about that. We'll look at that in the future.
Okay. Can you hear me? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks, I have a friend. Her father is actually Jewish. She's not Jewish, but she is Norwegian. Her mother's Norwegian, and she went to Norway, and she went into this thing where they have Norwegian witches. She believes she is one, and she wanted to do a reading for me. She believes you uncover the unconscious through that. So I thought this is kind of fun, except I was at her house, and she has all these paraphernalia for this, and she has a prayer that she says first. She said, "Do you want to say this prayer with me?" I said, "Are you kidding?" I said, "That's really a step too far."
That far. I am not going.
And anyway, I felt very uncomfortable.
So she considers herself a witch?
Yes, absolutely. She is a witch. She knows she she has been able to do things. She actually put a curse on her ex-husband, but then took it off. But anyway, and he did have some problems after that. But
did she ever mention Harry Potter at all?
No, she's not a Harry Potter. But she has a wonderful story about lords. Her father is Jewish. Okay, when she studied in France. That was her major, and she studied in France for a year. and she wanted to go see what Lourdes was like, and she went there, and she said it was very different than what she thought it would be. It was these different, like, different little holes with pools. It's not just one thing where you go in. There's different sections that have pools, and they have a nun there, and you sit on the side of the pool, and then you go through it up to his. So she's sitting there on the side, and then you go through the water, and you go up to a statue, and you're supposed to kiss the statue of Jesus. So
Did
she's
she
sitting
have to
there,
have an ailment that she's being healed? She's being healed?
you
from
don't have to have the ailment.
something? Did she have
Obviously,
something?
most of the people there were, but she was
Yeah.
just doing it to see what it was like. But anyway, she said she was sitting on the side, and finally the nun came up to her and led her through the water, and she was almost at the statue, and she yells out, "Je suis juif!" I'm a Jew.
Oh my gosh.
It's a great story. And
Was it just did she intend to, or did it come from within?
no, she didn't know it would affect her like that. But when she saw this statue in front of her, and
Lois, this is worth taking a minute or two. This woman, this is some cool stuff.
yes,
That's very cool. That's very cool. I believe a short story at least, Lois.
Well, write it.
No, Lois, this has fallen into your lap, as we'll
She's really
say.
something. She's a very interesting woman. She really
Wow,
is.
that's
Yeah,
that's very fascinating.
And she's a
All right.
witch, but she's a Jew.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Which kind of
Thank
witch? That's the question.
Oh,
Which
a
witch?
very good one. A very good
Yes,
one.
I'm sure. The witch of the north, or
North.
the witch?
The North, Norway. I don't know. Okay.
Oh, okay, that's good. Good. Okay. All right. Be well. I look forward. Estelle, I didn't specifically get to say hello to you, Estelle. Estelle, hello. It's good to see your avatar. Good to see your little mic thing there. All right, guys. Be well.
See you tomorrow, hopefully.
Bye-bye. Yes, Bezrat Hashem. Thank you. Bye-bye.